This story still gives me chills, kinda like something out of a horror film. A few years ago, my family and friends and I took a vacation to Cuba to get away from the harsh cold weather back home. It was a pretty big resort and packed with a lot of people. The nights were always full of drinking and fun, but there was one night that was pretty abnormal. So when we bought our tickets, we got a package that included a VIP club access at the resort. The workers would take the tourists in a mini bus, I'd say, as the club was on the other end of the resort and kind of far. This night I planned to be sober because since we were far I wanted to make sure that my friends and I got back to our room safe. So we get to the club and everyone else is dancing, drinking and enjoying. Now we met a group of girls that told us that they were off from college and came down to Cuba for some time away from school. We partied with them all night, and while partying there was this one girl in the group of friends that was always smiling at me when we danced and always looked like she was talking to her friends about me. So since I was on vacation I took my shot and tried talking to her. I asked her what her name is, and she pulled me close and said in my ear, "If I told you, I'd have to kill you." I laughed it off cause she was smiling when she said it, and the music was loud so she had to say it into my ear. So it was getting near the end of the night, I'd say around 3 a.m. and they wanted to take a group picture, so I had my camera that I took for just normal photos of scenery and stuff, so I gave it to a worker and he took a big group photo of us. In this photo was all my friends and the other group of girls, and I had my arm around the one girl I tried talking to. After that we said our goodbyes and went back to our room. When we got back to our rooms, my friend that shared a room with me knocked out drunk in bed so he was asleep. I couldn't sleep much as I was thinking about the girl and how much fun I had. I turned on my camera and was going through the photos of the night, and what happened next I will never forget, and in the moment had me very scared. In the picture the girl I had my arm around was an old lady with gray hair and a lot of wrinkles on her face. I almost threw my camera. I couldn't believe it. I know you might think I put my arm around someone else by accident, but there was not really any old ladies like that at the club and I was completely sober. I turned off my camera and put it in my camera bag and put it under my bed. The thought of that picture had me up at night stuck and figuring out what the heck was happening. When I woke up in the morning I gathered all my friends and wanted to show them so bad. They all got together in my room and they didn't believe me. I pulled out my camera and went through the pictures. The picture was gone. I went through all 572 pictures, and it was gone. They didn't believe me. So we went out for lunch at one of the restaurants at the resort when we ran into the group of girls. When I asked them where that friend was, they said, "Oh, we don't know her much. We just met her yesterday at the club. She said she's a student and studies in Connecticut." As soon as I heard that I had chills all over my body. One of the most bizarre things to ever happen to me. Makes me scared to travel to foreign countries again. I have a family friend who owns a beautiful and very old house in a wealthy suburb in a large city. She was going on vacation and her husband was leaving for a business trip, so she asked me to cat sit for her. I had done it for her before and adored the house and area, so I agreed. The house appeared very small and quaint from the street but was actually very rambling and had a bizarre layout and never seemed to end. The basement was a walkout with 2 doors, and 2 staircases that led to the main floor. This house was so weirdly designed that you would find rooms and hallways and doors you didn't even realize existed even after days of staying there. I spent most of my time in the front room of the home, which had a very large window facing the street and no curtains. One night I was studying on the couch in the front room in front of the window. It was so pitch black out that I couldn't see anything outside even though I was just inches away from the window. I started to feel extremely on edge and uncomfortable, and like I was being observed. Around 2:30 a.m. I shut off all of the lights in the house and retired to a small bedroom in the middle right side of the main floor that had a window with blinds. I watched a few videos on YouTube, making sure to leave the door open a crack because the cats like to come in and out throughout the night. I thought I heard a male voice coming from the basement at one point, but I dismissed it as me being creeped out about being alone in this old rambling house. Around 3 a.m. I decided to shut everything down and go to bed. For the first time in hours, the house was completely quiet, because I was no longer reciting information to myself during study or watching any loud videos. However, that silence was fleeting. It was quickly broken by what sounded like a very large man loudly stomping up the stairs from the basement. Thus began the most terrifying experience of my life, during which I was certain that my life was in great danger. This person was not trying to creep around the house or be subtle. They made no attempt to hide the sound of their steps. They very deliberately and loudly clomped their way up the staircase, like they were supposed to be entering this house at 3 a.m. Because of this, I thought perhaps the owner's husband had come home from his business trip early and didn't realize I was still there. I called out "hello" in a harsh questioning way to indicate that I was not expecting anyone to be there. I was hoping it was the husband and that he would maybe respond back, perhaps confused or apologetic for scaring me, but instead there was silence. As my voice rang out, the steps stopped and no words were spoken. I knew then that something was wrong. I got up from the bed and just stared at the crack in the door, waiting for something to happen. Then, the timid female cat bolts into the room, meowing like crazy and winding around my legs, seemingly distressed. This cat was so timid that she would run away from me at the slightest noise or movement, but now she was so spooked that she was running towards me for comfort, even though I had been calling out aggressively and jumping out of my bed. Then I knew that whoever it was not someone this cat was familiar with, and therefore no one who had any business being in that house. I went to the bed and picked up my cell phone and called 911. Then I picked up an iron, closed the bedroom door and leaned against it. It had no lock, so I had to just hope they wouldn't try to push their way in. I was on the phone with the operator and pretty certain my life was going to end. I was shaking so hard that the door was violently rattling in the door frame. At one point the operator told me to listen to what was going on, so I forced myself to stop shaking so I could hear. But when I heard movement, I let myself shake again so the door would rattle and I wouldn't have to hear them walking around. If I was going to be killed by this person, I didn't want to go through the dread of hearing them walking towards me. Eventually the cops showed up and I had to dart out of the room and run to the front of the house to unlock the front door. They come in and spend all of 5 minutes searching this chaotically laid out rambling house. One of them even commented, "It just keeps going," in disbelief. They didn't find anything. At first I thought I must be going crazy because there was no question in my mind that I had heard the footsteps, but the police are telling me all the doors in the basement are locked. They ended up leaving, but because of all the rooms and furniture and weird little nooks and crannies in the house, I just felt like a 5-minute search was nowhere near enough to actually find someone who wanted to conceal themselves there. I ended up calling my mother at 3 a.m. crying, and she came over. Then I realized something. The intruder would have walked right past my obvious pile of cash on the kitchen table, and it was untouched. This made me think that they weren't there to burgle. I have often wondered if the person had been waiting for me to go to sleep, just hyping themselves up to come upstairs and do whatever the hell they were planning, and perhaps hearing me aggressively call out to them and call the cops deterred them that night. It terrifies me to think of what would have happened if I had been asleep, or what that person was planning, having walked up the stairs so boldly like that when it was obvious that someone was home. We noticed the next day that the laundry room window in the basement was open. Apparently the police hadn't even noticed. I searched the news in that area online, and there had been a break-in incident just weeks prior where a woman woke up in the middle of the night to an intruder sitting in the dark watching her sleep, who proceeding to rape and badly assault her. I've been messed up over the whole thing since. Which story did you like best? comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until we meet again.